We are on. Welcome to the, I guess it's fourth quarterly David Pakman Show Town Hall. We have producer Lewis here in studio. What else do we have? We have Dennis. Dennis is going to be managing all of the requests to ask questions. So if you would like to ask a question, the process is, I always forget exactly where the button is because I'm looking at a different interface. But there's a button that says like request to go on air, something along those lines. So if you press that, Dennis will check in with you, make sure that everything's good to go as far as your camera, microphone, etc., and then put you on. And then you can also submit text questions, and those will appear, I believe it is right above where the video is of Lewis and of me. I've made a small adjustment, Lewis, to my audio at Dennis's request, and I'm told that it's a little bit better now. So Dennis, you start, you let me know when you're ready to go. We, of course, have an hour until the State of the Union address. I will be watching, Lewis. Will you be watching, or is this the type of thing you avoid?
Well, I'm supposed to review some beer, and I need to run to the package store, and they close at 9, so maybe I'll watch some of it.
Yeah, I would advise watching some of it. So let's get right into the questions we have. First, I guess we'll just start with a text question and just take them as they come. So Dennis, let's do the first question and see if we can get things rolling here. Okay, question from John Greenlee. Have you and Lewis had the opportunity to enjoy any of the cultural or entertainment offerings of your respective cities now that you're settled in? Besides restaurant and movies, would you care to share any experiences? All right, Lewis, do you want to tackle this first?
Okay, cultural. Well, I mean, it's not. It is an American city, so you do a lot of the normal stuff. I'm not sure what. I mean, it seems like everyone in Austin has a dog. I think dogs are a big part of the culture. I do not have a dog, but I have been to dog parks, and dog events with other people. And of course, I have worked downtown during South by Southwest and during Austin City Limits, which are big music festivals that happen in the city. South by Southwest is a lot of things, and I've enjoyed it. It's a lot of stuff like that. Nothing really too strange that I've participated in. How about you, Dave? You're in one of the biggest cities in the world.
Right, yeah, a lot of stuff going on here. Yeah, I've done a ton of stuff, everything from museums or even museums, as Lewis likes to say. I've been to all sorts of, music events. There's all sorts of festivals, food festivals. I mean, it's just, every weekend there's something. It's almost like you have to pare down what there is to do. A lot of, in the summer, every place has outdoor seating and there's outdoor music venues and all that stuff. So yes, I would say I've certainly taken advantage of all of that stuff. Okay, I'm told we have a video question next. Dennis, let's queue up the next one. We have Michael Harris. Michael, welcome. Oh boy, we see Michael, but we cannot hear Michael. It seems that Michael has what we may call a technical issue. Michael, are you there? Yeah. So Michael's going to have to sort out his microphone. So Michael is off there, and while Dennis works with Michael on that, Dennis, did you have anything lined up already? I know sometimes these things come in batches. Okay, we'll take a text question from John. When I was young, I'm 53. We nerds dreamed of our adulthood in Star Trek. I had these hopes through my late 20s. Are any of, I'm guessing, your childhood dreams fading from view? I didn't really have specific ideas, Lewis, of this kind of future, so to speak. But there's. It seems like this idea of flying cars is always kind of in the background, And we're actually going to be doing an interview with someone coming up who's developing flying cars and thinks that it's not too far off technologically. But no, I don't. I never really had very specific ideas of what the future specifics about the future that are now being proven wrong.
I'm right there with John because I grew up watching a lot of Star Trek and many sci-fi movies, and I always wanted to be in space, to fly in space in one capacity or another. Somehow I wanted to do that. And so I wouldn't say that my dreams are of doing that are starting to fade. I think we're getting closer to that because I think in my lifetime we will have transportation that will take us at least to a point where there's no gravity. And I'm hoping that I will one day be able to participate in that. That is very exciting to me.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of almost already have it, right? We have SpaceX and we have some other companies that are already have prototypes that can get us close to what you're describing. I mean, I think the one thing that a lot of my friends have been saying as we start entering and getting through our 30s is they had a feeling that by this point you would feel like an adult and feel like you had a sense of what's going on and you know the way you probably imagined your parents did when you were little, and that has not happened yet.
Yeah, I guess I would say that that has not happened for me either. But I think we have a lot to look forward to. There's a lot of really exciting stuff happening right now, and I'm just really fascinated by the space exploration stuff. And I hope that I can experience zero gravity. Let me put it that way.
All right, Dennis, let's get a look at the next question here. We have Christopher Pauling. How do you pronounce your last name, Christopher? Oh no, Christopher having the same problem as Michael. We can see Christopher, but we cannot hear Christopher. I think what it is, just so everybody knows, is in Spreecast, usually the default mic that it chooses for you is not actually the right one. I had to go to like the third one. Lewis had to go to the second one. So make sure that when you talk, you get a reading on your within Spreecast. Give that a shot, Chris. All right, can we hear Chris?
Not yet.
No. Yeah. So all right, we'll take Chris off so he can get that sorted out. We'll get Chris back on. So let me explain what's going on here. As Dennis is noticing, it is happening to everybody. This has never happened to me before. When I went to select my microphone, the default microphone when I would talk would not show any audio level at all. So I had to click over and select each one until eventually it did show an audio level when I spoke. So keep that in mind when you get set up. And Dennis, if you think we have, I know we have a bunch of people waiting right now. I don't know if anybody has working audio, but feel free if you think somebody does to put them up. All right, we have Grant. Grant, let's hope that, nope, Grant is gone. Grant has disappeared. Dennis has kiboshed Grant. Apparently Grant's audio was not working. We were able to see Grant, that I know for sure. So Dennis, you tell me what you need us to do. Dennis is in charge, I feel like. Okay, Martin. I know that Lewis despises Stella Artois. Does David concur with this intense repudiation, or is it a popular beer in his life? What are your favorite beers? And you will notice Martin indeed using the English spelling of favorite. He is one of our viewers over from the UK, where I believe it's 2 in the morning, Lewis, if I'm not speaking out of turn. No, Stella is not a beer that I am thrilled about. If I'm in a situation where there are really limited options, I used to go with Blue Moon because, of course, I like Belgian-style beers until I found out that Blue Moon is now part of, tell me who it is, Lewis. It's some big company that I think is tied into white supremacists.
I think it was originally part of one of those big American breweries or companies, but who knows? Maybe now it's owned by a foreign country.
In any case, so I've kind of put an end to that. So if it's really the only thing that's remotely close to what I like, I will go with Stella. But I generally prefer Belgian microbrews. For the more common ones, Allagash White is a beer that I like. I've talked about Clown Shoes brews a beer called Clementine, which I like. That's my style, you know, Lewis?
That is David's style, and whether or not it's a good style is up for debate. I've reviewed some of my favorite beers. I haven't found in Texas. I haven't found my favorite beer, and my favorite beer is called Spezial Rauch beer. It's from Bamberg, Germany, and it's a smoked lager, and it's my favorite beer. But I'm kind of all over the place with beer. but I love Belgian beer and I love German beer. I just think that Stella, to me, just seems like the Bud Light of Belgian beer. So that's why I don't like it.
And Lewis, this favorite beer of yours, it's not too smoky, is it?
No, I think it's got a reasonable level of smokiness. It's not like some of the ones I reviewed that are like drinking a bonfire in a bottle.
Okay, good, because that would be concerning to me. All right, there's Martin's question. Martin from the UK. Dennis, we'll take the next one whenever you have it. Joe Casto, hey guys, just want to know if you will cover two issues, the Mitt Romney eToys lawsuit and the war crimes lawsuit against the Bush administration by Germany. Thank you very much. I actually looked at the Romney eToys lawsuit yesterday, and everything I was finding on it was from last year, and I was wondering whether it was not an outdated story. But we can, if there's something new going on with that, Lewis, we can certainly check it out. And the war crimes Bush Germany story, it's kind of on my if we have the time for it list for this week. I don't know, I'm mixed about covering it because on the one hand it is a big deal because other countries are very seriously acutely aware of the war crimes they believe were committed by the Bush administration. But at the same time, we've seen those types of actions taken by other countries, and we know that realistically it will never actually lead to any kind of repercussions, and it's unlikely that Bush or Cheney will ever step foot in those countries. Remember the Switzerland thing.
And I think Canada was there. There was a couple times Cheney could not go to Canada when he was supposed to or wanted to, and I think that's usually how it ends. If they do convict him of something or want to try him of something, he can just avoid that country and nothing will ever come of it. And so in that way, I guess it's kind of pointless to discuss. But I don't know. Maybe this will be different than maybe they can convince all of the European Union to join in this. But I don't see that happening.
Right. I mean, I'm certainly interested in the story as far as what it means in terms of what other countries are very aware of that many in the U.S. still deny. But yeah, I have both of those stories bookmarked, and they may make their way onto the show relatively soon. Okay, Dennis, let's take a look at the next question. David Hogger, have you guys read or heard of any studies or tests done with self-driving cars and their performance in poor weather conditions like snow, heavy rain, wind, etc.? Yes. So very notably, we talked about how the Google self-driving cars drove something like 700,000 miles without a single traffic ticket, I believe exclusively in California. And we talked about how great these self-driving cars seem to be. But the one area where self-driving cars do not seem to do as well is with poor weather conditions. And I'm completely confident, and I'm wondering if you are too, Lewis, that this is an issue that will eventually be resolved. This is a fixable issue. But right now, and it may be just as a result of where the testing has been done of these cars, the self-driving cars do not do well in the poor driving conditions. And of course, there are poor driving conditions all the time and unpredictably. So if you're really going to move in the direction of self-driving cars, that's kind of a problem you need to solve.
I think that there is an answer to every situation when it comes to weather. If you consider in a car that's driving automatically and it approaches an icy hill that it cannot get over, and I've faced this while driving, and I'm sure plenty of other people who live in the north have as well. You have to ask, the car has to know, well, what do I do now? Do I just pull over to the side and wait? Do I find an alternate route? What if there is no alternate route? I mean, I'm sure that they will find a way to deal with this, and it may just end with the car not moving at all for quite some time. But what I'm more concerned with, and I've talked about this before, are the situations where you need to do something radical while you're driving, like hit another car or do some type of crazy maneuver to avoid something even worse happening. And how will those cars be able to handle that? And David's laughing, but there are articles about this, and it's a real issue.
No, it's a real issue.
But I know, yeah.
You would think, though, that it would be possible for the cars to have logic that would tell it, if you're about to be T-boned by a tractor trailer, just rear-end the car in front of you and start pushing forward. I mean, I think these are the types of things that you're talking about, right, Lewis? These types of situations.
Sure, that is one good example. Yes, that's exactly the type of situation I'm talking about. And I guess there will be contingencies for it and programmed into the cars, but you have to assume that there are just going to be certain situations that the car will not be able to make the right choice on, and that's another topic, I guess, when that happens.
Very good topic. I mean, this is a topic obviously we care about a lot, and we'll probably do a report soon about the driving condition tests that have been done. Dennis, we will take the next question. We have Michael Harris back. We have Michael Harris's video. Do we have audio from Michael Harris?
Do we have the audio?
We do not.
We do not.
Oh, we do.
Oh, I
It was
think
just very low.
yeah, it's just very quiet. It's very quiet.
Let's see if I can get Michael turned up.
See if I can talk again. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. You're going to have to get very close to that microphone. But yes, Michael, we would love to answer a question for you.
Someone has raised a question about comparing Pope Francis to Mitt Romney. I don't know if you've gotten to the question yet.
We have not gotten to that question yet. There's something very unusual going on here, Louis.
Has either of you thought that you go a bit too easy on the Pope, who's pandering in his own way as Mitt Romney is? So I just wanted your comments on that question.
I'm confused though, Michael. I see that the question from John has now popped up about Pope Francis and Mitt Romney. Was that your question as well, or I'm glad to take your question first, and then we can deal with John's question if you would like.
Actually, that's my question at the moment. Yeah, I wanted to.
Okay, Michael is cutting in and out, but I'm gathering from Michael that he would like us to answer. I guess it's the same question that John is asking. I don't know if there's any connection, Louis, between those two viewers. But in any case, have either of you thought that perhaps you go a bit too easy on Pope Francis, who is as pandering in his own way as Mitt Romney, considering that he is delusional and an enemy of free thought and social progress? I think that even if they were to have similar positions, the analysis of an American Republican having position A on an issue and the leader of the Catholic Church having that same position A on an issue would be different by virtue of the positions they hold. When you are talking about a politician like Mitt Romney, the expectation based on the law is that we have separation of church and state, and that we have a certain expectation for the basis on which one should legislate. So for me, it's a much bigger deal in a sense, even though they both pander, when Pope Francis does something that is a significant departure from the kind of regular line of the Catholic Church, that can have significantly more impact, even if it is pandering to a certain extent, than what, quite frankly, Mitt Romney would have if he were to modify a position or make some kind of a statement. So I don't know that it's a question of going too easy. I think it's that the context and the position that someone like Mitt Romney holds in society and the Pope are just so different.
I don't think, to take this from another angle, I don't think we're going easy on Pope Francis. I mean, we're critical of him, but when you put it into perspective, if you compare him to just about every other pope, he seems incredibly progressive. And is he progressive by our standards? No, not even close. But it has still shaken up the church in a very big way. And I'd like to think that some of the comments he's made, has opened the eyes of some of his followers and some of the church's followers. So, I guess we're still critical of him. I don't think we're going easy on him. But when he says something that is out of the ordinary for someone representing the church, I think it's worthy of at least a little bit of praise. It's certainly worthy of discussion. And you can count on us not pulling any punches on Mitt Romney in the upcoming election.
And not only that, the Pope is in a position of power, whereas the majority of our program has seen Mitt Romney be a candidate for stuff. And by its very nature, your analysis of things someone says when running for a position would be different than when they are actually in place and making decisions. So I think that there are some pretty significant differences there. Very good question, though. Dennis, let's go to our next question.
Hey, man.
We have YMS.
Yeah, my name's Adam. Some of your viewers may or may not recognize me. I have my own show too. I think that you're very professional, and I recently decided to become a patron. Your Patreon count looked a little too low, so I thought I'd help out. I'm wondering if you've ever covered something called basic income on your show.
All right, I'm going to keep you on, but we're going to just mute you just so we don't get feedback. We have talked about basic income. We have talked about a job guarantee, and we have also talked about basic income. We actually interviewed a great economist, Pavlina Chernova, not that long ago about her guaranteed job program, which is a very different thing than guaranteed income. I am very much interested in the idea of a basic income, and a few economic analyses, Lewis, that we've talked about suggest that first and foremost, you might be talking about kind of zero sum with regard to if you guarantee someone an income, all of a sudden you save all of the money, or at least a significant portion of the money that you might be spending via social welfare programs, which often are very much more expensive to administer. So if you imagine someone getting $2,000 a month as a basic income with no prerequisites that need to be met, that probably would cost way less than that person receiving $2,000 in various cobbled together welfare program benefits, because each of those programs has its own infrastructure and administration fees. So I think that there would be something actually pretty fiscally conservative, Lewis, about a basic income.
If you're talking about those types of numbers, yeah, it seems like in theory there could be. Of course, if you were to bring this up to some of these politicians, I'm sorry, Adam, we can't hear you right now.
Hold on, let me unmute you, Adam. We haven't heard what you said because just to prevent feedback, we had you muted. So I know you want to comment, so I'll bring you back in.
I think the biggest argument for basic income, in my opinion, would be that we're moving towards sort of a decline in jobs no matter what. Regardless of whether or not it's going to cost taxpayers more, I think we have to face the fact that our population is increasing, jobs are decreasing, everything's becoming automated, et cetera, and is it really worth it to have people that are working as hard as they can, that are currently able to have a job, still working as hard as they can, and then get pushed into the jobless factor or jobless section just because jobs are disappearing? I don't think it's worth it in that sense.
No, that's a good point, and thank you, Adam. I'm going to comment on that, and then we'll move on to the next question. This is, if there is no question that we're moving towards further automation and technological advancement, and we're really going to start getting to the point, realistically, within the next 10 or 20 years, where way more jobs than most people are considering are going to be essentially superfluous or unnecessary and replaced by machines. And given that, we have to consider whether we should continue thinking about employment and labor the same way we do now, or whether we could actually move towards a society that is not necessarily based around what we today consider as work, so to speak. And actually, Arthur C. Clarke wrote a book called, I believe it's In Childhood's End, where he kind of toys around with this idea. But yeah, Lewis, I mean, we kind of need to start disconnecting the modern notions of work and labor from our economic analyses as we continue to automate, don't you think?
Agreed. I think if we're talking about a basic income, if we start losing as many jobs as we think we're going to lose, you have to ask yourself, well, are those people who no longer have jobs, are they going to be able to live off of this basic income? Will this basic income take care of them? I don't think we'd be able to do that. So, of course, we'd still have to supplement them in a way by making sure that those big companies and that the top 1%, if it's still 1% at the time, are paying what they owe the government, and that the government can invest in infrastructure and all sorts of other things to help people who just aren't able to work.
Well said, Dennis. Let's take the next question. Fred Walden has written in, I've noticed over the last several weeks you have had interviews with people where the interview goes on too long and you cut it off. Lately, you've been continuing the interview the next day. I hope you continue to do this, as it is very frustrating when you have an interesting person on and it gets cut off. Yeah, we've been, to kind of pull back the curtain a little bit, we have been, not every day, but let me start over. For interviews that are not necessarily related to breaking news, we will sometimes record them the day before they air. And this gives us the flexibility before we're tied into how much other stuff we have on that show. If on Monday I record an interview and it goes 25 minutes, we can put 12 and a half minutes on Tuesday, 12 and a half minutes on Wednesday, and it won't affect kind of the broader flow of the show. So when we have an interview that might go long, we've just been scheduling it a little more creatively. And people, Lewis, have really been liking the longer interviews.
Sometimes, yeah, and you know, depending on the content, sometimes we'll have someone that just has a story that requires a lot of explaining. And I didn't like it when we would put the rest of it on, or the entire interview on YouTube, and only have part of it on the show. I like splitting it up when we need to. You know, there are plenty of interviews that do not need to be that long at all, and you know, eight minutes would suffice. But yes, I like what we're doing with this now, and I'm glad that other people are liking it as well.
All right. Thank you, Fred, for that comment. Dennis, we'll try. I think we have video maybe coming up, but there's a question mark around the audio. We have Larry Conley. We can see Larry. Can we hear Larry?
I don't know if you can or not.
We can hear you, Larry. Excellent.
Oh, you can hear me. Well, I guess my testing the mic did work then.
What can we?
Any thoughts?
Today?
What's your thought on what Obama's going to do in about a half an hour from now, taking on the Republican Congress?
Yes, my thought is that conveniently or coincidentally, call it what you will, President Obama will probably give what would be one of the more progressive State of the Unions tonight. And while this is a really great thing, it is unfortunate in a sense because we now have Republicans controlling the Senate and controlling the House, and it allows President Obama to say really progressive things with absolutely zero chance of them ever becoming the law if they are the types of proposals that require congressional approval, because Republicans are just not going to allow it, Lewis. And I am not saying this in a way to suggest that this is a calculated move by President Obama, although I am not ruling that out. It certainly may be. He knows that he's a sitting duck. He knows that he can now propose essentially whatever he wants, and there's going to be very little accountability in the sense that, hey, Republicans control both sides of Congress. So I expect some progressive ideas. I don't know what percentage of what is said tonight is going to make it into the law before President Obama is out of office.
I don't really know. I mean, I think I know what to expect when it comes to fiscal policies in the U.S. and taxes and all of that. I'm very curious to hear what he has to say about foreign policy. I imagine this is something he will have to address. There's a lot going on right now, and he hasn't been talking about it much. And so I think that's going to be important, and I really have no idea what he's going to say about it, but that's what I'm looking for in the State of the Union.
Larry, what are you expecting?
Well, that's interesting. I kind of agree with Lewis. No matter what he says, the Republicans are going to oppose him. I think he is going to take a very progressive track. And I think the Republicans need to remember they are the heirs of Theodore Roosevelt, although they may not want to remember that. It was rather progressive in his era.
No question about it. Absolutely. Great question, Larry. Thank you for that one. And we'll keep going. We're about almost halfway through here. We've gotten a bunch of questions, and we'll take more. Michael Tazano, I have a feeling that Obama is going to, as progressive as Teddy Roosevelt was. We had a period of Kennedy honeymoon for a few months at the beginning of his first term. Being that he seems so far away from Clinton and Carter, I see him going bulldog, as in Teddy Roosevelt. Republicans and Democrats were inverted then. Agree, disagree? Yeah, I like I said, I think there's a very good chance that you're going to see a sort of aggressively progressive Obama tonight. And I think I just wish that would have been the Obama we saw 4 years ago as opposed to now. It's just, if that is what we see, it's just kind of too little too late in a sense.
I think his back is against the wall. All he can really do is try and change the conversation, and I hope he does. So we'll see what happens.
Absolutely. I will certainly be watching. Thank you, Michael, for that question. And Dennis, we'll take the next one. Dan, do you believe in advanced extraterrestrial life? I feel like it's almost a statistical certainty that advanced life must exist beyond Earth, but I've never seen any proof. Find the UFOlogy movement an almost complete joke, and never really hear thoughts on this subject from people whose opinion I respect. Thanks. I believe in science and math, and if you look at both the equations and theorems around why it is incredibly likely that there is intelligent extraterrestrial life, and the theories about why that life could exist and we still may not have had any contact with it, I am still on the side that a preponderance of evidence suggests to me that advanced extraterrestrial life may well exist or have existed, which if you look at the Fermi paradox, you will see a lot about how if you consider how long the universe has been around, and if you consider how long we humans have been on this planet with a certain level of advancement where we might even be able to notice other societies, intelligence, extraterrestrial life, it is very possible mathematically that there was advanced extraterrestrial life very far away and long ago, such that we would never have come in contact with it. So yes, I believe that there must be, when people say advanced, I don't know that I'm saying, exponentially more advanced than we are, but certainly some form of what we would consider intelligent life in the universe, I think, is out there.
I think I would be quite comfortable saying I'm sure there's other forms of life out there. Advanced life, probably. How advanced, I don't know. They could very well be far more advanced than us, but of course that doesn't mean that they can travel across galaxy after galaxy after galaxy and reach us, observe us, or contact us. Just like we will not be able to do that for a very long time. And it's kind of a bummer. I wish they would. I wish we knew. But I would say that I believe that there probably is advanced life in one form or another out there somewhere.
For people who want to read about this, check out Drake's equation and also check out the Fermi paradox, and that'll give you at least some basic sense of why we may be dealing with something that is a real thing here. Okay, Dennis. Dennis is going to send us the next question here. It is a text question from Matt Schlegel. Lewis, have you picked up your axe lately? Getting a new band together? Is axe code, Lewis, for guitar?
Axes, yes. Axe means guitar. I practice regularly. I was jamming with a drummer for a little while, but it kind of fell through. I have not been looking. I have not been pursuing anything. I would very much like to be in a band again because I enjoyed it. It was good practice. It was good for me. I became better because of it. And I just, right now, I just haven't been focusing on it. But I have been playing. I have been practicing. So hopefully soon I can get back into that.
Fantastic. All right, Matt, thanks for the question, and we will continue on with the next one. Paul Christensen, do either of you have a stance on electronic cigarettes and the aggressive regulation that is taking place across the United States? I don't think it'll be a surprise to anyone who's been watching our show, listening for any length of time, that I absolutely hate cigarettes and smoking, and further see an insane double standard with regard to marijuana, given that smoking cigarettes with all of the incredible additives and toxic chemicals in them is legal. The electronic cigarette thing, I have mixed feelings about it. On the one hand, it is way better than being next to someone who is smoking tobacco, obviously. However, in most places in the U.S., I don't know if there are even states where you're allowed to smoke indoors anymore, but in the states I primarily am in, you cannot smoke indoors anywhere. So you never really would be next to someone who is smoking tobacco. So then the question is it annoying when someone next to me is smoking an electronic cigarette? Some of them do have kind of a weird smell. I understand that I guess it's mostly water vapor. I haven't really taken a strong stance on electronic cigarettes. I know that a lot of the people personally that I know who have tried to get off of regular cigarettes with electronic cigarettes end up going through so many, I don't know what it is, cartridges or whatever goes in, that it's actually equivalent to way more cigarettes than what they were actually smoking. So for some people, it seems like it's kind of backfired.
There are so many different. First of all, it's way better than cigarettes. If I have
Yeah.
to be around it, I would prefer it any day. But there are so many different kinds. There are so many different types of the liquid, and who knows what's in them. I mean, I think this should be researched extensively before regulations are passed. I'm sure it's full of nasty stuff. I'm sure we probably shouldn't be breathing it, but I'm hoping that more people will go to e-cigarettes over regular cigarettes.
Yeah, do I want someone smoking e-cigarettes next to me? Probably not. Would I accept everyone who's smoking regular cigarettes instead smoking e-cigarettes? Absolutely. Walking through the streets of New York would be a drastically different experience if that was the case. Okay, Dennis, let's go to the next question. We have Jason Melton. We have video. And we have very, very muffled audio, which has now calmed down. And I think we can hear Jason.
I just wanted to ask you what you thought about my new investment strategy, which is if the Republicans take the Oval Office, to find out the companies they work for and then invest heavily in those companies. Is it immoral for me to profit off of their immorality?
All right, let me pause for a second here, Jason. It sounded like Jason was calling us from a boiler room or a submarine where there's an emergency going on. I heard only that you want to propose a new investment strategy to us, Jason, but I'm going to need you to tell me again what that strategy is.
Okay, if the Republicans win the Oval Office, I want to find out the companies that they came from and then invest heavily in those companies. Is it immoral for me to profit off of their immorality?
Oh, this is
Thank you.
this is a great investment strategy. Obviously, I mean, can you imagine if when Dick Cheney had come into office, we said, hey, you know, he has this connection to Halliburton. Let's invest now in Halliburton and see what happens. That would have been just a brilliant move. So yes, I think that this is a very good investment strategy, Louis. I would recommend doing it if you are okay knowing that you're funding your retirement with something that is implicitly blood money.
I wouldn't feel too bad about doing it if you're going to get screwed by a Republican in the Oval Office anyway. You might as well get something out of the deal. So I think this would be much easier to do with Mitt Romney as opposed to some of the other candidates. But yeah, you know what? I say go for it. Maybe I'll do it too.
Yeah, I mean, if someone's background is a community organizer, it's like, what company do you invest in, right? That kind of makes it a little tough. Very, very good question, Jason. I think that there may be something there. So thank you very, very much for suggesting that. I think our audience is probably going to take note of that. Okay, Dennis, let's continue. John Koenig, I'm not exactly sure how that's pronounced. So frankly, from her tone to the dullness of details in Solo, the former Scientologist you interviewed proved that the details and nuance of great crimes make media ignore them altogether. I realize in that case legal issues arise, but in general do you find that nuance and detail make stories unpalatable to Americans because freedom? Yeah, John's bringing up something which I think is relevant, and it's also relevant, you know, the interview that we had on today's program with Linda Martin from the Followers of Christ. And I wonder actually if John is confusing the Followers of Christ person with the Scientologist, because I didn't think that we had kind of a dull Scientologist on. But the woman today certainly was a little bit dull and required prompting. There's no question that the topic can be very interesting, but a bad guest can completely destroy the ability of normal media to put the story out there in a way that's appealing and palatable to people. How can I possibly disagree with what John's saying? And we've been dealing with this from a production standpoint for years, which is, yes, the topic may be good, but what is the guest like? How do they present?
I think he's talking about Headley, who you had on, who was discussing escaping from the church, and I think he's right in that, you know, I just read a study recently that showed that people tend to like songs that are more simple. So even when there's less nuance in music, it turns out that that's what people pay attention to and like more. And I think you can apply this to just about everything. I think once you introduce nuance to anything, you are losing the majority of people, and you are losing their attention. So I think that's just it.
And this is always an issue for us because we, on the one hand, want to put stories out there that we think are important, and at the same time, we need to realize that if they're not packaged in a way that is palatable to the audience, it doesn't matter if it's a good story because no one will see it, and if no one sees it, it has essentially zero impact. So as a non-corporate media outlet, we kind of have to be aware of this and find a balance that makes sense. Really good question from John. Dennis, let's go to the next one. I think we may have a video question here. Christopher is back. We have video from Christopher. Do we have audio from Christopher?
I hope so. Can you guys hear me okay?
We have audio from Christopher.
All right. Great. Well, hey, first off, I'm very, very pleased to be talking with you both, David and Lewis. Thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it. It's pretty cool. I'll get right to my question here.
Glad to be here.
Thanks, guys. Well, real quick, last night I was searching your your YouTube wall and checking all your questions. I wanted to make sure I asked a question here that hopefully you already haven't answered. You guys have answered a lot of questions throughout your tenure in your show. So I'll get right to it here. What are some of the biggest disagreements between you, David, and Lewis that you guys have had on the show?
They mostly come down to, this is a good question, not so much issues, but they come down to what would be good for the show. So I think that oftentimes we will not see eye to eye on whether a particular guest or topic would be good, or Lewis will send me a story and I'll say, yeah, I think the story is done. I think we've missed the boat. It's not relevant anymore. And Lewis will say it is. Or I'll say we should really interview such and such. And Lewis will say, I don't think that that's a good guess. Right, Lewis? I mean, I think that the disagreements are more with regard to kind of the production of the show rather than the issues discussed.
That's usually the case. I can think of a few times where that was brought up. And of course, those are arguments that David always wins. But there have been a few...
But seriously, Lewis, that actually isn't true. Very often I will think that a guest makes sense, and Lewis will say, you should really think twice about this, whether this is actually going to be good. You can tell that this is going to be a difficult guest, and even if the topic is good, this will not be a good guest. And very often I will say, I think you're actually right, let's just drop it.
One of those guests I spoke out against having on again was Orly Tates, the birther who just goes on a rant for 20 minutes and you can't get a word in. But there have been a couple issues on the program where we disagree. It's very, very rare. But I think there was an issue with guns in Florida, and maybe, I mean, I think I can count on my fingers the number of times over the whole course, the whole time I've been working with David on the program, I can count on my fingers the number of times we've disagreed on certain issues.
Now, what does happen sometimes, Lewis, is that you'll disagree with me fervently, so to speak, and then you end up being proven wrong by the fact. So recently there was that incident where I was saying it is not safe to fire a gun into the air. You were saying it is safe, and then the next day you had to issue a mea culpa because all of the evidence and about 50 members wrote in saying that Lewis is saying something very, very dangerous here.
Yes, that is one of those situations I had to recant after that one. Great example. Thank you for bringing that up, David.
All right.
Seems sometimes,
excellent
okay.
question. No, go ahead, Christopher. Yeah.
I was going to say sometimes, Lewis, it seems you and David conflict a little bit on the paranormal subjects every once in a while. You'll tell a scary story that happened in the past, and then David and his brother will have to come in and talk a little bit more about it, you know? That's funny.
No, that's actually a really good one. So we'll take Chris off and allow Lewis to address that. That is, I did forget about that, which is that Lewis maintains, well, I don't want to speak for Lewis. What is it that you maintain?
I am a believer. I guess you can call it that. So I believe in things that we call paranormal, that okay, by definition, paranormal. We can't explain it. Science can't explain it. But I don't think it's hocus pocus. I think that one day science will be able to explain it. It's just something we have not really delved into. So that, I really got into it with Dave and Natan on that. But I stand by it. I do believe in some of the things that we refer to as paranormal activity.
Yeah, I mean, who can deny that there are things currently that humans cannot explain via science. I don't think anybody would deny that. I think where you get into kind of the woo-woo stuff is, the concept of so-called psychics and that type of thing. But we're now getting kind of more into the specifics of it. But you're just, of course I agree with you, Louis, that there's lots that we can't yet explain.
Of course. I don't think we've even scratched the surface. I mean, there are still plenty of things we don't even know about the planet we live on, never mind our brains or what is out there, or, we're just getting started.
All right, Dennis, let's go on to the next one. And Dennis, try to keep us posted as to what we have kind of coming up so we have a sense of, what we can squeeze in the next 15 minutes. Dan, if America ever becomes so patriotic that you or Louis face deportation or exile, what are the top countries you'd consider moving to and why? And Louis, let's assume for the purposes of this question that the difficulty of getting legally accepted to live permanently in these countries wouldn't be an issue, because as we know, a lot of the top countries might be actually tough to get into.
Okay, so I'm starting with this one. I think I have done a little bit of traveling, and so I can't really say, I can't speak for all the countries in the world. I can't pick from the whole list. So I can pick from the ones I've been to. I think I'd feel more comfortable doing that. And the time I spent in Sweden was pretty amazing. And I think I would pick a place to live based on what I think my quality of life there would be and the quality of life in general there. And so Scandinavia would rank very highly at the top of that list. Of course, I am not a big fan of winter, so that might be an issue. But Scandinavia, without a doubt, would top my list. And then perhaps if that didn't work out, I would look to somewhere a bit warmer, I think.
Yeah, and for me, I will go into this a little bit in terms of the countries I've been to. Of course, if the economic situation were better, my original home country, my birth country of Argentina, would be a place I would be very interested in being. And it's crossed my mind to at some point, maybe I could be there half the year or a quarter of the year or something like that and just do the show from there. In Europe, Switzerland and the Netherlands are really just incredible countries that, it is just really a great place to be. And beyond that, there's a lot of countries that I really like. Certainly France and Spain I like, although I don't know that they would be my top choices. Mexico is a place where, some of the nicest people in the world are the Mexican people. So again, economic issues, corruption issues aside, Mexico has been a great place. But this is all kind of hypothetical. I think that most of the places I've been have great things about them. There would be a lot of great choices, let's put it that way. Dennis, let's look at the next question. From Hermosa, hey David and Louis, what do you think will happen post the Islamic State, post Charlie Hebdo? Oh, I think maybe she means to the Islamic State post Charlie Hebdo. Will they get stronger or weaker? Interested in how foreign policy will change and the involvement of Anonymous. I don't know. The thing about ISIS, Louis, and the Islamic State is that while they clearly are emboldened right now, on a worldwide basis, this is not a hugely strong organization, right? Of course, they're able to carry out individual acts of terror. They control some territory in limited parts of the world. But this is not a group that wields power in the way we think of transnational power typically.
That is true. Of the groups like this that tend to wax and wane, they have made a presence. They have made a statement. So I'm not sure how this attack will really affect them. The attackers, although I guess you could say are connected to the Islamic State in some ways, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they did it in the name of ISIS, did they?
Well, they did it, to avenge whatever it was for the Prophet, so to speak. So, yeah, that lines up that's right in line with the beliefs of ISIS. But did they specifically cite ISIS? I guess maybe not.
I think this is a group that can easily be I don't know, terminated, I guess you could say. But it's not easy now, especially after the wars we've been in, and other countries, of course, are hesitant to get involved. I don't really know if they're going to get stronger or weaker. I imagine, at least in the short term, I see them getting at least a little bit stronger. But other countries are going to have to get involved here.
As far as Anonymous's involvement, I think that Anonymous would certainly have the ability to shut down websites and maybe social media accounts, but I think ultimately that is not going to decide the fate of the Islamic State. So I think Anonymous could have a kind of impact on the PR, but as far as their terrorists on the ground, so to speak, I don't know. I at least I'm not aware specifically of how Anonymous might get involved there. Great question. Dennis, let's take another question. We've got about 10 minutes here. Question from Christopher. Since the David Pakman Show frequently reports objectively and many times on news stories against big money in politics, do you ever become concerned for your safety? If so, how do you cope with it? Well, we've talked about this. I mean, there have been threats, and we've had to be in touch with federal authorities about different threats that have come in. As I've said before during interviews with people who were talking about threats that they said they received. I don't think that publicizing or really talking too much about specific threats is a really good idea because it can create copycat people. It can give people the idea that this is a way to get you to talk about them and that type of thing. The specific question about whether there could be lobbyists or businesses that would come after us, yeah, I mean, that is not really the type of fear that I have because generally we don't really do investigative type reporting where they might be able to kill a story that they know we're working on that could be really damaging. We comment on stories that others have published. So by the time we talk about something, with the exception of interviews where, the Scientology interviews and that type of thing, there's direct kind of new comments being made. We haven't broken the news about the corporation or whatever, so I imagine we wouldn't really be first in line.
Yeah, once it's out, and we are discussing it, and thousands of other people are discussing it, and on forums and blogs, maybe hundreds of thousands, maybe millions. So, and even then, ultimately, I mean, we're small time, right? We're not, we don't have millions of followers. And so when we're discussing a story, it's not really our names up in lights. So I don't think we're painting a target on ourselves, at least not yet.
Yeah, and not to give ourselves credit. We do have now a regular audience that we estimate to be around 250,000 per day if you combine podcast and YouTube and all of our venues. But I think what Lewis is getting at is that we are not the primary source for these stories, and that at least helps to blur the target that may be on your back. Time for a few more questions. Dennis, we will take the next one whenever you are ready. John Moyer, why did Obama in his first term pardon the Bush administration for the war in Iraq? Now, I don't have the information in front of me, but correct me if I'm wrong, Lewis. Did Obama pardon the Bush administration, which has a very specific meaning, legal meaning, or did he say that he is not going to be pursuing war crimes charges against prior administrations, which is not really a pardon, it's just saying he is not going to be pursuing that?
I don't think it was an official pardon. I think...
And let me add, Lewis, sorry to interrupt, but you can only pardon someone when they have been convicted of a crime. So in that sense, of course, there was no pardon.
But what it was, I guess, was inaction. And I think Obama had a full plate when he took office, and he probably, maybe he wanted to pursue this course of action. Maybe he didn't. I'm sure he was advised not to if he did want to. And I have to say, you know what, I probably, if I were in his position, I probably would have done the same thing. I probably would have just not acted on it because there were just so many other things he had to focus on.
And not only that, I mean, what does it do to your ability to get things done if everything becomes about you going after a previous administration? I think that the previous administration, of course, deserved to have been investigated and potentially, or depending on what the investigation turned up, to see charges levied. But I don't know that it would have been the most productive thing for President Obama to do that, although if President Obama appoints somebody, an attorney general, who decides
Right.
to investigate, who could say that that is not within their purview?
Yeah, he probably could have delegated that work, but maybe he was just playing politics too. But he did have a full plate, and I guess it just wasn't on the docket.
Okay, Dennis says we have a video question coming up. Let's see if let's see what we have. We have Cameron. We have video. Do we have audio from Cameron? Yes, we can. You're very low. Yes, we can. You're very low, Cameron. I'm going to turn you up here. Try to talk, closely.
Yes, I was just wondering. I was watching a Frontline documentary recently about North Korea. I think it's the one that you talked about on the show. And I was just wondering, how long do you give the regime, and do you think it could join with South Korea, or how that would collapse? I would say.
Yeah. So we'll go. Let's do the second part first, Lewis, which is reunification. In North Korean documentaries, you will see that all of the PR flacks in North Korea are very well indoctrinated into talking about reunification. Reunification is the goal. Reunification with South Korea is what eventually will happen. I am not convinced that if there is a fall of the regime, that it will be that the next step will be reunification with South Korea. I don't know exactly how it would go, but I do think that the North Korean regime, if they don't do something really stupid, and we can all imagine kind of what that would be, I think that the North Korean regime may stay in power for some time, because with a lack of resources that does not really interest other countries, there hasn't been a catalyst for getting too involved in North Korea. So I think as long as they just make threats and don't actually do anything stupid, they could last a while.
Yeah, I think unfortunately I think they are going to they're going to keep this up for quite a while, as long as they don't start shooting missiles anywhere or anything like that. Unfortunately, and I have a friend who spent many years in Korea, not South Korea, of course, and he said that the Koreans basically, just through their speech and mannerisms, it's clear that they refer to the North Korean people as their brothers. And so I think that South Korea would definitely be in favor of reunification. North Korea, though, it's hard to tell if they actually hate the South Koreans or if they just say whatever they need to say to stay alive.
Yeah, and I guess there's, while the official line may be, we're just waiting for reunification with South Korea, you're bringing up a good question about what it is that the individuals in the country may have been indoctrinated into believing now. But great question, Cameron. I think that there may well be a long runway still for the North Korean regime. Thanks, Cameron. Great question. All right, and Dennis, if you have anything else, we may have time for one more question if you have it. From Bart Zimpson, I wonder how that's pronounced. What's your view on the next generation? They've grown with the Iraq-Afghanistan wars, recession, and have no perception of the American dream. They are more mobile and will be less dependent on union or business-based pension plans. Yeah, and you're seeing, I recently read an interesting article, it might have been in The Atlantic, about how our generation, Lewis, is increasingly not owning vehicles, not owning homes, and just kind of having a more rented and leased sharing economy type of place within the world. And this applies a little more to people that are maybe like 5 years younger than us and below. So it's hard to say what this next generation is going to be like. If you think of like my little sister's generation, she's 10. She has grown up with technology that for us kind of came into existence while we were already teenagers and young adults. Her entire education as a result of the technology that exists is very, very different. The types of jobs that will be in demand when she finishes college, presumably in 12 or so years, will be in a very different world than the one in which you and I graduated from, and even that we have now. So I think there's no question it's going to be a different situation for the next generation.
And it's totally dependent on the direction we're headed in. Is the wealth distribution going to be even worse? 5-10 years from now? How are things going to resolve? I think that's an important question to ask. Things could go in a lot of different directions.
Yeah, and as Oxfam, we talked about today on the show, Oxfam says that by 2016, the top 1% will control 50% of the world's wealth. And when you have that level of inequality, by necessity or by desire, you are going to see people make different choices in life and even choose from a different palette of options, for lack of a better term. So I think that with this kind of 10 to 20 year horizon on pretty significant changes technologically, medically, etc., that have been kind of discussed for some time now, there will be a very different new generation of people for sure. All right, on that note, it is 9 p.m. The State of the Union address will be starting soon, so we will stop today. Thanks to everybody who participated. Thanks to Louis. Thanks to Dennis, who facilitated all of the questions tonight. And we will do another one of these in a few months. We will let everybody know. Always great to take questions. And I will let Louis have the final word today.
If we didn't get to your questions, just email us, and perhaps we will answer them. We'll try to answer them on the audience questions segment on the Friday show, or just answer them personally. If you don't care if they're appearing on the show, we'll do our best. And maybe I can convince David next time to extend the duration of these town halls, because we can never get to all the questions, and we should maybe try to get to more next time. I'll see what I can do.
Thank you.